Understanding what's actually happening. Buddhist Wisdom. There's a question that most of us rarely stop to ask ourselves. We ask many questions throughout our lives. We ask what career to pursue, what decisions to make, how to solve problems, how to get what we want. We ask about the world outside, the news, the events, the opinions of others. But there's one question that seldom crosses our minds, even though it might be among the most important. Right now, in this very moment, in this very mind, what is actually happening? Not what happened yesterday, not what might happen tomorrow, not what someone said or did. But right here, right now, inside this experience we call being alive, what is truly going on? If you pause and really consider this, you might notice something interesting. We spend our entire lives inside our own experience, yet we rarely look at it directly. We're always looking through it, at the world, at other people, at our goals and fears, but we almost never look at it. The experience itself, the process of experiencing, often remains invisible to us, like a fish that has never noticed the water it swims in. And here's the deeper irony. We think we understand. We think we know what's happening. We have explanations, stories, interpretations. I'm stressed because of work. I'm unhappy because of that person. I feel this way because of what happened. We have reasons for everything, but having a reason is not the same as truly seeing what's going on. In fact, the reasons often get in the way. They become a kind of veil, a layer of thinking that covers over the direct experience itself. The Buddha noticed this over 2,500 years ago. He saw that most human beings live their lives in a kind of fog, not because they lack intelligence or strength or goodness, but because they haven't learned to look clearly at what's actually happening inside. In the Sabba Sabba Sutta, he made a distinction between two ways of using the mind. He called them yoniso manasikara, wise attention, attention that reaches the root, and ayoniso manasikara, unwise attention, attention that misses the root entirely. What's the difference? It's not about ignoring our problems or pretending things are fine when they're not. It's about where we direct our attention when we're in the middle of difficulty. When we're caught in unwise attention, we tend to stay at the level of stories and analysis. We replay what happened. We imagine what might happen. We analyze why we feel this way, who's to blame, what it means about us. And while this can sometimes be helpful, it often keeps us spinning, thinking about the difficulty rather than seeing it clearly. Wise attention is different. Instead of getting lost in the story, it looks directly at the experience itself. What is actually happening in this moment? What sensations are present in the body? What is the quality of this feeling? What is the mind doing right now? This isn't about dismissing your concerns or pretending the difficulties aren't there. It's about meeting them in a different way, with direct awareness rather than endless analysis. In his very first teaching, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha didn't talk about the universe, gods, or abstract philosophy. He started with something much simpler and more immediate, the fact of suffering. He said, "Now this bhikkhus is the noble truth of suffering. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Illness is suffering. Death is suffering. Union with what is displeasing is suffering. Separation from what is pleasing is suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering." In brief, the five aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. He pointed at experience itself. He acknowledged the full range of human difficulty, the unavoidable pains of existence, the heartbreak of loss, the frustration of not getting what we want. He didn't deny any of it. He said, in essence, look here. Look at what's actually happening. Verify this through your own experience. This invitation to see for yourself through direct experience is the heart of what the Buddha taught. It's an invitation to wake up to what is already here, what has always been here, but what we often don't see clearly because we're too busy thinking about it. So the question stands, what is actually happening? Not your story about it, not your interpretation, not your analysis of why or what it means, but the thing itself, the living, breathing, constantly changing reality of this moment. What is it? And what might we discover if we really looked? Here is something that might surprise you. You have never experienced the world directly. What you experience is not the world itself. It's the mind's version of the world. Every sight, every sound, every sensation you've ever had has gone through a process of interpretation before you became aware of it. By the time you experience something, it has already been filtered, shaped, and colored by the mind. You're not seeing reality raw. You're seeing a construction. This isn't just philosophy. This is how perception actually works. When light hits your eyes, it's just light, patterns of electromagnetic radiation. The eyes convert this into electrical signals. The brain processes these signals and constructs an image. The image you see, the colors, the shapes, the sense of depth, all of this is created by the brain. It's a representation, not the thing itself. But it goes deeper than this. The mind doesn't just construct sensory experience. It also adds meaning, significance, and emotional weight. And this is where things get interesting. The Buddha described this process with remarkable precision. In the Mahanadana Sutta, he laid out a chain of conditions, how one thing leads to another in our experience. He explained to Ananda, feeling is a requirement for craving. Contact is a requirement for feeling. Name and form are requirements for contact. When there is contact, when a sense organ meets an object, a feeling arises. This feeling, called Vedana in Pali, is not emotion. It's something more basic. It's simply the quality of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral that colors every moment of experience. Before you even have a thought about something, there's already a feeling tone present. This happens automatically, below the level of conscious awareness. From this feeling, the mind then reacts. If the feeling is pleasant, the mind moves toward it. It wants more. If the feeling is unpleasant, the mind moves away. It wants it to stop. This movement is what the Buddha called tanha, craving or thirst, and from this craving, a whole chain unfolds, clinging, becoming, and eventually suffering. This chain happens incredibly fast, faster than thought. In a single moment of experience, the mind goes through contact, feeling, craving, and reaction before you even know what's happening. You don't see the process. You only see the result. I'm sad. I want this. I don't like that. These conclusions feel like they come out of nowhere, like they're just facts about reality. But they're not. They're the end products of a process that happened beneath the surface. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine someone says something to you, and you feel hurt. In that moment, it seems obvious. They hurt me. What they said was hurtful. But if you slow it down, something more complex is happening. There was contact. The sound of their words reached your ears. There was a feeling. An unpleasant sensation arose. Then there was interpretation. Your mind gave meaning to the words based on your history, your expectations, your sense of self. Then there was a reaction. Hurt. Defensiveness. By the time you notice feeling hurt, all of this has already happened. The same words spoken to a different person might not cause any hurt at all. The same words spoken to you on a different day, might roll right off. What changed? Not the words are just sounds. What changed is the process in the middle, the interpretation, the reaction, the meaning the mind assigned. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught practitioners to observe this directly. When they feel a pleasant feeling, they know, I feel a pleasant feeling. When they feel a painful feeling, they know, I feel a painful feeling. When they feel a neutral feeling, they know, I feel a neutral feeling. Simple, direct awareness, not analysis, not judgment, just knowing what is present. This is the beginning of seeing the difference between what actually happened and what the mind added on top. This is where clarity begins. When people hear about observing the mind, they often imagine something distant and unattainable, reserved for monks, requiring abilities they don't have. But here's what might surprise you. The basic act of seeing is something you already know how to do. It's so familiar that we overlook it completely. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, as you're reading these words, are you breathing? Before I asked that question, you probably weren't paying attention to your breath. But the moment I asked, you knew. You didn't have to do anything special. You didn't have to try to notice. You just noticed. The breath was there all along. The awareness was there all along. The only thing that changed was where you pointed your attention. That's the basic capacity we're talking about. It's not a technique you need to learn from scratch. It's simply noticing what's already present. The same is true for anything happening in your mind. Right now, is there any feeling in your body? Any tension? Any sensation? You might not have been paying attention to it. But the moment you ask the question, you can feel it. There might be tightness in your shoulders, a subtle discomfort in your chest, a sense of restlessness or calm. Whatever is there, you can notice it. Not by doing something extraordinary, but by simply being aware. Now here's where it gets more nuanced. The capacity to notice is natural and accessible. But developing this capacity, making it steady, continuous, and deep enough to see clearly through our patterns, that takes patience and practice. Think of it this way. You already know how to pay attention. But most of us have spent years, decades, being absorbed in thought, being carried away by emotions, being lost in stories without knowing it. The mind has deep habits. It's used to running on automatic. So, when you sit down to observe, you might find that you can see clearly for a moment. And then, before you know it, you're lost again. This is not failure. This is simply the force of habit, meeting the practice of awareness. The seeing itself is accessible, but sustaining it, deepening it, letting it penetrate through layers of conditioning, this is where the practice comes in. This is why it's called a practice. Here's where people often create unnecessary difficulty. They hear, observe your mind, and they start trying very hard to observe. They get tense. They concentrate intensely. They turn observation into a task, a job, something to work at. And ironically, this trying gets in the way. There's a word the Buddha used, viharati, which means dwells or abides. The practitioner dwells observing. It means staying with, living with, not straining at. There's a quality of relaxed attentiveness in it. It's more like sitting by a river and watching the water flow. You're not doing anything to the river. You're not trying to control it or understand it or change it. You're just sitting there and the water flows and you see it. That's all. The mind is the same. Thoughts come. You see them. Emotions arise. You see them. Sensations appear and disappear. You see them. You don't need to push them away or hold on to them or figure them out. You just see them being there, then changing, then going. This is what makes seeing so different from thinking about. When you think about an emotion, you're adding more thoughts on top of it. You're analyzing, questioning, judging, trying to figure out why it's there. This might be useful sometimes, but it's not seeing. It's more thinking. When you actually see an emotion, it's completely different. You're not in your head analyzing. You're in your direct experience. If there's anxiety, you feel it. Not as a concept, but as actual sensations. Maybe there's a tightness in the stomach, a restlessness in the limbs, a constriction in the chest. You feel all of this as it is. Not the story about why you're anxious, just the raw experience of anxiety itself. Here's something remarkable. When you truly see a mental state, really see it, not just think about it, something shifts. When you're caught in it without knowing, the emotion is everything. It fills your whole experience. It drives your thoughts, your body, your words. But the moment you see it, oh, there's anxiety here, you're still feeling it. It doesn't instantly disappear, but you're no longer completely lost in it. And that makes all the difference. This is not suppression. Suppression is when you say, I shouldn't feel this, and try to push it down. That creates conflict. Seeing is completely different. Seeing doesn't fight anything. It doesn't say the emotion should or shouldn't be there. It just seems, this is here, this is what it feels like. There's no resistance in that. And without resistance, the emotion doesn't have anything to push against. It naturally loses some of its grip. So yes, the basic capacity to see is already within you. It's natural. It's accessible. But learning to see clearly and continuously, to see through the fog of habit, to see beneath the surface of your reactions, to see with enough steadiness that real understanding emerges. This unfolds gradually. So far, we've looked at how the mind creates experience and how we can simply see what's happening. But there's a deeper question. What changes when we actually see? The Buddha placed avijja, ignorance, at the very beginning of the chain that leads to suffering. But this ignorance is not about lacking information or education. It's much more immediate than that. It's the absence of clear seeing in this very moment. When we don't see what's happening in our own mind, the chain of reaction runs on its own. Contact happens. Feeling arises, craving kicks in, and we're carried along without knowing it. And here is what the Buddha discovered. When awareness enters, ignorance steps back. They cannot fully occupy the same space. In the moment, you clearly see what's happening, really see it. Not just think about it. Ignorance is no longer running the show. A space opens up between stimulus and response. And in that space, you're no longer just reacting blindly. You have room to respond differently. In the Satipatthana Sutta, when describing how to observe the hindrances, the Buddha said, they understand how ill will arises, how when it's already arisen, it's given up, and how, once it's given up, it doesn't arise again in the future. Notice this carefully. It's not just about seeing what is present. It's about understanding the conditions, how things arise, how they can be released, and how they can be prevented from arising again. This is wisdom in action. And this is why seeing clearly doesn't make you passive. It makes you more capable of wise action. When you're lost in a reaction, you have no choice. You're being pushed by forces you can't see. But when you see clearly, you can still act. You can still speak up. You can still address the situation. You can still set boundaries. The difference is that now you're responding from understanding, not from blindness. This doesn't mean the difficult emotions disappear. They may still arise, but they no longer have the same power over you. They're like clouds passing through the sky. You see them, you feel them, but you're not swept away. The Buddha spoke of this as yatthubhuta jnana dassana. seeing and knowing things as they actually are, not as we want them to be, not as we fear them to be, not as our stories say they are, but as they actually are in this moment. Before we add anything, this seeing is intimate. It's direct contact with experience itself. And here is something important. This freedom is available now. It's not something you achieve only after decades of practice. Every time you notice what's happening instead of being lost in it, that's a moment of freedom. These moments might be brief. They might be followed by long stretches of being lost again. But each one is real. Each one is a taste of what's possible. The practice is simply to have more of these moments, not by forcing, but by gently returning to awareness. This requires patience. The mind has been running on automatic for years, for lifetimes. It requires gentleness with yourself, because you will get lost again and again. And that's not failure. That's simply how it works. The freedom is not in never getting lost. The freedom is in the coming back. It doesn't require anything complicated to begin. Just stop, one breath, one moment, and ask, right now, what's actually happening? In that question, something opens. In that seeing, freedom begins.